Welcome to Ukraine, with your host, Pastor Bert.
Beloved, in our last episode, Putin, Totalitarianism, we presented Putin's own words that Russia and any country his invading armies conquer, all will be subjugated by regime and ambitions.
Как это не печально и как это, может быть, не страшно звучит, на мой взгляд, в нашей стране поворот к тоталитаризму на какой-то период времени возможен.
Totalitarianism. You just heard Putin's claim, his intent to model his Russian empire after the totalitarian example of these two men and institute this type of a regime. In our time, the most noted totalitarian regimes the earth and its people have suffered is under the rule of these two megalomaniacs. What is similar about these two men is that neither one recognized or took responsibility for their own national loss in the killing of millions of their own citizens that were and are killed in their wars of aggression. The United Nations claims that over 1.4 million Ukraine have already been killed in Putin's war. So Putin, their apparent death of their own people, is following these killers' examples. The Encyclopedia Britannica defines totalitarianism as, quote, a form of government that attempts to assert total control over the lives of its citizens. It is characterized by strong central rule that attempts to control and direct all aspects of their citizens' life through coercion and repression, unquote. Totalitarianism does not permit individual freedoms such as freedom of speech, freedom of press, or the freedom to assemble. When such men demand their nation's citizens to patriotically fight and die for the fatherland, in truth, they are demanding the public fight and die for them only. To him, Putin is the fatherland. When Putin ran for election to president of Russia and then re-election, never once did he tell the voters or Russia that his rule would deny freedom of speech, freedom of press, or freedom of assembly that Yeltsin's constitution proclaimed. But in truth, all totalitarian rulers deny all such rights and legislate against their country's own law and constitutions in terms of civil rights. Most of all, the right and respect for free elections. The consent of the electorate is pure blasphemy. Any totalitarian ruler like Putin, Stalin, or Hitler, who treat the results of elections as mere propaganda jokes used as manipulated lies that serve only to stain the current dictator. Some might dispute this. Putin is a Russian. He hates Hitler. Yes, Putin hates Hitler, but he wants to be like Hitler, to be feared like Hitler, to be hated like Hitler, because he wants that power for the citizens of the invading countries to be as terrified as they were of Hitler's stormtroopers, and most of all, to kill more people than Hitler, because like a god, Putin wants the power of life and death over all humanity. You don't kill and murder as many people as Putin has already unless you like being a killer. Just like any serial killer, the more he kills, the more he wants to kill. This is what makes him a psychotic. Sexually speaking, Putin has a small penis. As Putin is a smaller man and every 5 feet 7 inches tall, here in April 2023, Putin's weight is down to 138 pounds. As Sigmund Freud theorized, killing makes Putin the megalomaniac, feel powerful man when inside he hates himself too small and having little character or imagination. Size matters, certainly in Putin's thinking. Putin can't keep a woman happy. In his frustration with women, Putin compensates by killing men. Hitler too had a small penis, and thus same reasons was another megalomaniac, just like I mentioned in our last episode, Putin totalitarianism, that Putin's TV address had 8 points, but then only covered the... Here I will review all 8, but keep my comments to observing Putin's strategic purposes.
И, друзья, сегодня, в новогоднюю ночь, я, как и вы, с родными и друзьями, собирался выслушать слова приветствия президента России Бориса Николаевича Ельцина. Но вышло иначе. Сегодня, 31 декабря 1999 года, первый президент России принял решение уйти в отставку.
Putin's lie was strategic business, as usual for a KBG counterspy and his communist supporters. First, if he acknowledges knowing about, then hostile media would claim he was behind Yeltsin's ouster and then not vote for him in the special presidential election to take place in 3 months. Second, if he admitted to being in on Yeltsin's resignation, the public speculated that he upped Yeltsin's reform policies, and this too would cost him votes. Third, if he admitted to having favored Yeltsin's resignation, he could not then convincingly present himself as Yeltsin's favorite lead him.
Он просил меня обратиться к стране. Дорогие россияне, дорогие соотечественники, сегодня на меня возложена обязанность главы государства. Через 3 месяца состоятся выборы президента России.
Many Russians would be upset that their choice for President Yeltsin had been nullified by a private decision of one man over Russia's constitution. So Putin specifically stated that he was now president to make it clear that Yeltsin was no longer president.
Свобода слова, свобода совести, свобода средств массовой информации.
Despite what anyone felt about Yeltsin personally, Yeltsin's democratic reforms were highly popular among the Russian people. Therefore, to gain their vote, Putin stated that he supports those rights under the Constitution. This, of course, was a lie because Putin's preference was to run a totalitarian regime like Stalin. He could not have won the special electoral president if he told the public his long-term plans were to disenfranchise the electorate and deny their civil rights.
Принимая свое решение о передаче власти, президент действовал в полном соответствии с Конституцией страны.
Here, Putin told the truth, because that truth served his purposes. He had to let the public know that the Constitution did provide the ability to replace an elected president, a power that still exists to this very day.
По-настоящему оценить, как много сделал этот человек для России, можно только через какое-то время.
Clearly, this was not a ringing endorsement of Yeltsin's democratic reforms. This would, however, delight the Communist Party left in opposition to think that, oh, well, possibly they could live with Putin. And they could. But the public should have realized that because Putin was not endorsing those reforms that he had served under, would likely never support them in future either.
Хотя уже сегодня ясно, то, что Россия пошла по пути демократии и реформ, не свернула с этого пути.
Democracy has been resisted by the Communist Party, who were now out of power, and thus a sizable minority of the Russian did not end of the dictatorship of the proletariat. But a mild way by his words was actually courting the communist vote because he was still a registered member of the Communist Party. Party leaders and members knew that.
Я хочу пожелать первому президенту России, Борису Николаевичу Ельцину, здоровья и счастья.
Putin had to reassure Yeltsin that his presidency would never prosecute Yeltsin. He was also reassuring Yeltsin that their golden parachute for Yeltsin's retirement remained intact. Any deviation on this point would have cost Putin Yeltsin's support in the upcoming special presidential election.
И поднимем бокалы за новый век России, за любовь и мир в каждом нашем доме, за здоровье наших родителей и детей. С Новым годом вас!
Again, we are back to the issue of drinking. Putin felt it necessary to offer an alternative explanation to dispute the truth that giving Yeltsin alcohol day after day was not a poisoning of a weakened president with a heart disease, which was exactly what it was. But gestures of patriotic fervor for a common cause. Russians seem to find an excuse to drink alcohol for everything, so Putin encourages the masses. Let us now get the whole country to drink to certify the deal of himself, Putin, as president. Here's a point to think on. Alcoholics never like to drink, so they encourage everybody around them to drink so no one can judge them. Likewise, insecure Putin was trying to deny that he was a poison even before the public or the media began to speculate that poisoning Putin's intent to weaken, kill, or remove Yeltsin, who stood in the way of Putin's coveted ambition, be now promoted to the presidency. Life moves in mysterious ways. In episodes to follow, you will find out that alcohol continues as a central problem for President Putin that simply won't go away. The story of Putin, Russia, and the coming war with Ukraine and the world is still before us. See you next time, beloved. Friends, thank you for visiting Welcome to Ukraine, this series, How to Stop Putin and His Nuclear War. Putin's like a puzzle. You can't begin to understand what Putin is doing unless you lay down and examine every piece of the puzzle, one piece at a time. Do this enough, and you will not only empower yourself, but all of humanity by learning of the threat and the risk to all human life. How to defeat Putin and to stop its nuclear war to save all our lives. Be sure and come back tomorrow for the next installment, for the next step also in solving this hidden puzzle. Because this issue is literally life and death for our species. Lives are at stake. Whose? Well, all of ours as well as yours. We must stand against this extinction of all mankind. We must not go quietly into the night. We must bring awareness to as many of our kind to encourage more opposition to Putin's nuclear war. Please help us to help you. Please visit us also on our parent site, Free Ukraine Gives. Remember, beloved, God loves you, so do I. Until the next time, this is your host, Pastor Bert, saying goodbye, friends.